Hi everyone, Jaymes Mansfield here bringing you yet another video. Oh my god, you guys, I am coming to you live. Well, not live. I'm coming to you from a hotel room. We are in downtown Los Angeles, so if you hear anything going on in the background, like ambulances or cop cars, you know, just LA things. Yes, I'm here on a project, but I decided I will not stop working. That's right, the YouTube keeps coming. So, I'm here to talk to you guys about another horror film while I do my makeup. Yes, today we're going to talk about Gremlins for the holiday season. So, first things first, if you want to know what products I'm using, I will list them all down below for you. And if you want to save a little money at Kimchi Chic Beauty, use my code JamesMansfield for 15% off your purchase. Yes. Now, all that housekeeping out the way, let me get my eyebrows blocked and I'll be right back and we'll talk all about Gremlins. All right, welcome back. All right, let's get started. Now, Gremlins is an outlier as far as classical horror goes because it's one of the very first, like, dark comedies horror films. And it was a monster success when it came out, all puns intended, because it is a monster movie. But I feel like the production behind this is also very, very fascinating because it was produced by none other than Steven Spielberg. You know, like E.T. Steven Spielberg. He started his own production company and they're looking for like their next project they wanted to do. Like they just did E.T. and it was a monster hit. Like fun for the whole family. E.T. was everywhere. There was E.T. fever. So they wanted to find something in the same vein, but with a little more edge. And when he was going through spec scripts, he found Gremlins, written by Chris Columbus. Now, the backstory on how Chris Columbus stumbled upon the idea of Gremlins is that it was loosely inspired by Roald Dahl's book, The Gremlins, which I believe is like a Disney, you know, like gold book. And essentially based off of like old wartime stories about how like little monsters would like sabotage planes and make them go down during WW2 and whatnot. So that was sort of a loose idea in his mind. But he mentions in a lot of interviews when he was writing this movie, what got him the idea was living in Manhattan, his apartment had mice. And he remembered he was asleep one night and he said he could always feel like little mice brush against his fingers. And he had this fear all the time that eventually they were going to start gnawing at his fingers, you know, like Alfred Hitchcock Presents, like Eaten Alive by Rats, that kind of stuff, The Bone Collector. Oh my gosh. Yeah, very that. A very medieval fear, but a fear nonetheless that I can understand. So he thought, well, they would scurry away into the darkness, you wouldn't know where they were, but it's terrifying the thought of something that could like eat you alive and it's teeny tiny and it's a lot of them. Like that's scary. Like yeah, a big monster is scary, but like a bunch of little monsters, that's terrifying. So he started to write the idea of Gremlins down, and he worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. And when he submitted his spec script to go around, everyone had rejected it. And until it ended up in the spec scripts of Steven Spielberg, by chance, did someone take interest in it. Now, the original script for Gremlins was much darker. It was a flat-out horror film. Like, that was the idea. He never crossed his mind to make something that all ages could watch. It was meant to be like, you know, a good hard R exploitation horror film. Much in vain of like the films that would come after, like the Gremlins ripoffs, that kind of thing, where those were more straight up horror. He gets a call from Steven Spielberg out of nowhere saying he's interested in buying his script and he wants to make it into a movie. Now, cut to them meeting together and he finds out that Steven Spielberg likes it, but wants to make some changes to it. So, he tells him, now this idea is very fun, but I think it has potential to be even bigger. So I'm gonna have you go back and rewrite some things and take some stuff out because there's some stuff in here that I'll mention later on that just aren't gonna work if we want this to be like a monster hit. Like we're gonna have to like rewrite it. So he goes back to the drawing board and comes back with the story that we now know as Gremlins. Also, I have to mention the cast in this is superb. It is like riddled with a bunch of great like old B-movie 1970s exploitation stars like are all riddled throughout. Not to mention the casting of Zach Galligan. Oh, Zach Galligan, my God. Childhood crush, okay? Even into adulthood, I love Zach Galligan. Like, you know, his later work, like All Tied Up or Waxwork. Like, oh, beautiful man, Zach Galligan. But I digress. His love interest is played by none other than Phoebe Cates, who I also adore. And I wish we'd come back to making movies because I loved Phoebe Cates. Oh my God, her and Shag the movie as Carson. Oh, my favorite, one of my all-time favorite movies is Shag the movie. And I adore Phoebe Cates. It's one of those actresses that like hit her stride in the 80s and then married well and just, you know, is a married woman now. She married Kevin Kline and she's not making movies anymore. She's fine. But I guess if you married Kevin Kline, you'd probably come to the same conclusion too, because he is wonderful. Okay. We have little Corey Feldman in this, a very young child star Corey Feldman. One of his first big movies that he had done, but like, child was a working actor for a long time before this. And directed by none other than Joe Dante. Now, he had secured this after his little short in the Twilight Zone movie had impressed a lot of people, especially Steven Spielberg, who decided, I want him to direct the next movie for my company. Joe Dante got attached to it and started riddling it up with a bunch of like his little quirky things that you can find in a lot of Joe Dante movies. And this is like the movie that really, really like pushed him out there and got him directing a lot more stuff. It was his first big movie he had done. Filmed at Warner Brothers Studios, which is kind of like, you know, interesting because I'm currently filming a project in the same little studio that they filmed some of the scenes in Gremlins on. Like, it's on the placard on the wall that Gremlins was filmed here. I was like, okay, well, now I have to talk about it. So, to get started on the story of Gremlins, it's a really good one. I adore this movie and I know it backwards and forwards. It's one of my favorites. We start off with Mr. Peltzer, the father, coming back from a toy convention, or just an invention convention. That's a fun word to say. Where he is not a great inventor. Like, all of his inventions are terrible. Like, none of them work. They all explode on themselves. Like, they backfire. Nothing actually works when it's supposed to. It's very that kind of luck. And he didn't make any sales at this convention, and he's on his way back defeated because he doesn't know what he's going to do. He stops in at a little shop in Chinatown where he has to find his son a gift. But he doesn't want to spend a whole lot of money, so he goes into this little shop, like hole in the wall, just looking for anything cheap he can grab his son as a gift to bring back with him before he has to like lay on some bad news to him. In this shop is a little creature called a mogwai. We get introduced to the adorable Gizmo, which is like, as a kid, I adored Gizmo. Like, I had the little stuffed animals and everything, and this is one of those like, it's one of those movies too where like, I fully showed my nephews this movie. It's one of those things I have a lot of good memories with. Because it's a fun movie. But like Gizmo, you see him, you fall in love with him. Like, he's so adorable. And he sings a little song like, the father is enamored, like he wants this thing. But the man that runs the shop is insistent, like, I am not selling you this. Like, he's not for sale. Like, it's too much responsibility. I'm not going to sell him to you. Mind you, he has a little grandson who sees a sale and sees money on the table that is just being snatched away and knows that they have to sell this thing. So as soon as the father leaves, the little boy meets him outside and says, look, give us like $100 and we'll give you the mogwai. He's like, but bear in mind, taking this, you have to follow some very important rules. First things first, you cannot give it wet. It can't get wet. Don't give it any water. No matter how much it begs, don't get it wet. Not to mention, keep it out of the sunlight. It can't see the sun at all. Bright lights terrify it. It will die in the sunlight. Which is like, hearing this, you're thinking like, okay, I don't think I want this in my house, but we'll keep going. Third and most bizarre of all is never feed it after midnight. It's like, I already love it. It's a great setup because it's like, you're giving rules of like what not to do and you already know, oh boy, they're gonna break these rules. And I cannot wait to see what happens. But he absorbs it and he leaves and returns home. When he gets back, we're greeted by Billy, his son, and his wife, and the dog. It's the cutest little like all-American family in this little small, you know, suburban, picturesque town. Like, it comes out of a picture book the way this town looks. He brings home the pet and he's of course loves it, and the mom decides to take a picture of it and it just freaks out and hides in his sweater and everything. It's like, we know, okay, yeah, he really hates bright lights. And the father reiterates the story one more time about these rules, like, you gotta follow these, like, this ain't just a dog, okay? You gotta take care of this thing a very specific way. Billy is, of course, excited and just happy to have his new pet home, and, like, it gets along with the dog, and Gizmo's adorable. It sings, it's everything you'd want in a pet and more. Like, instantly watching this, you're like, I want one! So, cut to the next morning. We see Billy's work life and his day-to-day life. He works at the bank, and he has this horrible, mean old bitch of a boss named Mrs. Deagle. And for some reason, he has his dog behind the counter, which I never quite understood. It's like, why are you bringing your pet to work? And she, of course, finds out about this. And he gets sacked. Because the dog, of course, gets triggered and jumps up, freaks out. It's a whole scene, and she is not happy about it. Well, he works at the bank with his crush, played by Phoebe Cates, who is adorable. It's such a refreshing change of pace for her doing a movie like this, because Phoebe Cates, up to that point, had sort of like a bad girl reputation. Like, I know her from Shag the movie, so like she played the ultimate good girl Carson in that. I didn't really know much about what she had done before that, but she was marred in her career with a movie called Fast Times at Ridgemount High, which is like a raunchy teen comedy, you know, precursor to like, you know, American Pie kind of movie. One of the most infamous scenes with Phoebe Cates from that movie is that she's getting out of the pool and it's like the shower is going on around her with the sprinklers, and she takes off her top so you see her boobs, which was parodied by Fountains of Wayne Stacy's mom. That's the fame, that's where it comes from, that's the reference. But like, this marred Phoebe Cates' career for a long time and made everyone believe she's this Hollywood bad girl. And it's a really hard reputation for her to shake, which is why she wanted to do this movie, so she could play something completely different from that. Even though if you watch Fast Times, she doesn't even portray like a bad girl. She's just a regular all-American girl. That whole scene is a fantasy inside the guy's head. But it was enough to like basically give her this stain on her career for a while. So doing a family movie seemed like a fun change of pace for her. And it was also dark enough to where it had a good kind of like speech that I'll get into later. But that's Phoebe Cates, and I adore her, as you already know. We stand Phoebe Cates in this house, or in this hotel. So we get to know Billy's day-to-day life, and like we see his friends, he's best friends with Corey Feldman, this little kid. And we're led to believe that like he has to be like at least like approaching college. Like probably senior year, because it looks like he's just freshly graduated and is figuring the life out and where he wants to go. He's hanging out with Corey Feldman, who is his friend, who's probably like a kid from a lower grade. We don't really get the whole backstory. Like he's just some neighborhood kid that hangs around there and looks up to Billy. So they're hanging out, and Corey Feldman has a glass of water with him. And Clumsy Ox trips, and the water spills and falls all over Gizmo. And then the worst happens. Like, it's a terrifying scene to watch back, especially as a kid. I was looking like, oh my god, no. It's where the movie really starts to take a turn, where it starts off really wholesome and cute, and then it starts to get really weird. So Gizmo starts freaking out. He hits the floor, and you just see his body just start to bubble up like it's boiling, like a waterbed, just like, it's so weird. Ugh. Out of nowhere, he starts to smoke up, and when it smokes up, fur balls just shoot out of him and go everywhere. Like they're bouncing off the walls and everything. It's like ping pong balls going everywhere. And when they land, they start to form up again. It's like he starts to multiply. Water makes him multiply. So rule number 1 is broken. They got him wet. Now, at first they're cute, and like Corey Feldman even tries to pet one, like the one with the little stripe. He pets it and it bites him. Solidified in his mind, like,
yeah, I don't want one of these anymore. I think I'm over the Mogwai. You can keep that.
And like as you watch the way they behave with Gizmo and everyone else, like the way they interact, they are mischievous. And Gizmo looks upset that he's multiplied. Like he did not want this to happen, and he knows nothing good will come of this. But Billy is too enamored with the idea, like, oh my god, they've multiplied, this is great. Like, this is the thing my father could sell. Everyone in the household's gonna want one, and it's so easy to reproduce them. Like, this is great. His father loves the idea and wants to, like, start drawing up ideas on how to market the Mogwai as, like, the new family pet. Like, it's like sea monkeys, okay? Like, he thinks, oh no, I'm printing money with this. And they're not like Gizmo. Like, they're kind of mean, and, like, they're nasty to the dog and everything. Like, little things just start to happen around the house, like things start to break. And he wakes up one morning and couldn't find his dog anywhere, and he looks outside the window. The Gremlins had basically tied the dog up in Christmas lights and hung him outside to like dangle. He's not dead. They put him outside the window basically as like they're sending a message. To go on another little off tangent, when the movie was originally written to be darker, the original fate of the dog was that the Gremlins eat him. And they find nothing but like, oh, LA. Someone's racing a motorcycle. The original script was he wakes up in the morning and just finds like the remnants of his dog. The Gremlins ate him alive. That, of course, didn't make it into the final draft. They cut that. Billy decides to take one of the Gremlins to his school to show his old professor, who is dabbling in science and like does a lot of experiments. He locks up in the cage and starts basically taking samples out of the Gremlin, trying to figure out what it is. At this point, they don't know they're Gremlins yet. He's just a Mogwai. He explains the rules, and like his professor obviously thinks like these rules are really strange and oddly specific for no reason. And this Gremlin just resents the hell out of him. You can tell every time he pokes him with the needle, he is just writing an Alfred Hitchcock film in his brain about what he wants to do to this guy if he ever gets out of this cage. At Billy's house, he wakes up to see Gizmo just distraught. And like he looks over and sees that the Gremlins had made their way into the fridge and had basically feasted on all of their food. And they're all just stuffed and fat, and he puts them back in the bed, and like they're still mischievous and stuff. But he figures, all right, well, that rule is broken. It's after midnight, but they ate and then nothing's happened, so I guess it's fine. So he goes back to bed, and when they wake up the next morning, Gizmo is distraught again and just like unconsolable. Billy wakes up and sees a bunch of like pods, like cocoon, gross, disgusting, slimy pods are all over. And like the mom looks up the stairs and everything is just like, what in the hell happened? The Gremlins are basically, you know, they're cooking. They are no longer the cute little Mogwai. And we all know like nothing good can come of this. Cut back to the professor. In his laboratory, he leaves for a moment, and when he comes back, he sees that like a little candy bar is missing. There's just an empty wrapper there. And the Gremlin has
eaten after midnight. And he knows the rules, but also sees it like, oh, okay, he's just got a stomachache, big deal. Like, it's just a rule, and nothing's happened, so what could possibly happen? And he comes to find his gremlin in a cocoon later on as well. Okay, so the next morning, the cocoons are there, and Billy decides to leave to go check on his professor friend to basically see what happened with his gremlin, because he told him the same thing happened overnight. Like, my thing has gotten to a cocoon. It's really amazing. Like, come over the first thing in the morning and see. So before that, we start to see what happens when they hatch. The night before, his professor is sitting in his office having dinner and hears commotion, looks over at the cage and see that it's warped and the monster has escaped. He can hear scurrying around in the lavatory area, and he's wondering, like, what in the hell? And he sees it and sees its new evolved form and tries to reason with it, like, hey, look, it was just a few needles, like, you can't be that upset, right? And we see it charge at him and then it cuts. We don't get to see what happened. The next morning, Billy goes to visit him to see what the discovery was. And when he arrives, he finds his professor has been, like, stabbed to death with needles. Cut to back at Billy's house. His mother is basically preparing the house, you know, just doing her regular chores. Things start to get a little weird when things start to go awry. Like, she hears the record player turn on out of nowhere, and this is one of the scariest scenes ever in horror, in, like, movie history, in my opinion. Like, really messed me up as a kid watching it, because it's like a mom in peril. But the record player is turned on and starts playing Do You Hear What I Hear? What you think about, it's like a really great, like, you know, juxtaposition for the horror movie. Because, like, when you hear that song, you don't think anything bad's gonna happen. A biblical song in Christmas time, it's a standard, everyone knows it. But they use it in such a great way where it, like, really sends chills down your spine, especially when, like, the orchestra hits and you see her just like exploring the house and she's got the knife and everything. She gets attacked by the gremlins. And, like, she fights them off so well. Like, she baps one of them with a frying pan and knocks into the, like, microwave, and she microwaves it alive and it explodes. Like, oh my god. Like, she stabs that one, stabs it to death. Like, she fights them off, and when she hears rustling happening in the Christmas tree like a fool, she goes to investigate, and you see the Christmas tree fall on top of her, and she's being attacked and mauled by these gremlins. Thankfully, in the nick of time, Billy arrives home and knocks the gremlins into the fire and saves his mother. But in the original draft of this movie, it's horrific, the idea they had originally. It's really horrific. The original draft Christopher Columbus had written was going to be that the mom is murdered by the gremlins. And when Billy comes home, when he walks in, the gremlins toss her severed head down the stairs at him. Like, oh, it's supposed to be like the head bouncing on the stairs and everything, like hush, hush, sweet Charlotte. Ugh, no, I'm glad they took that out. I don't like this story. That doesn't happen, the mom lives. But the gremlins break free and start to cause chaos all over the town. They attack Mrs. Deagle, his old boss, and they make her wheelchair malfunction, like the little traveling wheelchair that goes up the steps. She lives in this, like, really, like, beautiful mansion that's just infested with cats, like cats everywhere. And when she sees the gremlin, she freaks out and hustles over to her chair, and when she tries to start it, she can't get it to start. And we cut to see the gremlins fumbling around with it, because that's like a gimmick for the gremlins from, like, old lore, is that they will sabotage machinery. So she tries to work it, and the thing just malfunctions and shoots her out the window. When you see her whole body inside the seat just, like, land head first into a snowbank. And Mrs. Deagle is no longer with us. Which is, like, you know, I want to say it's sad, but it's not, because she was a real bitch, so it's fine. It's completely fine. Next to get the axe is Billy's neighbor, who's kind of like a prejudiced old fart. So, like, you don't really feel bad for, like, a lot of people that die in this movie. You're just like, okay, well, it's not so bad, because, like, they kind of were shitty people anyway. But his prejudiced neighbor gets it next when his snowplow malfunctions and plows right into him and his wife in their back door. Although, according to lore, I guess he doesn't technically die, he's just maimed. Because he's in the sequel, him and his wife. Like, they technically survived this. But in the original movie before this, it was set up as a death. Next, we see Phoebe Cates. She's one of those characters in stories, like, you watch them, they're always working somewhere else. Like, they have, like, 16 different jobs. She's working her night job in the bar, and she is being harassed by all the gremlins. Like, they're ordering drinks and everything, and, like, it's kind of comical and cute, but you can tell, like, she just is trying to figure out her way out of here, because she can only be hospitable to these so long before they start to attack her.
Oh my god, I almost forgot this. Okay, so it's not really vital to the plot, but it is, like, super random. So Billy and Kate are walking along in the snow, and it's really, really cute, and you think, ah, it's like a little couple, and then he brings up Christmas. She's like, did you mention Christmas? because I don't celebrate Christmas. He's like, you don't celebrate Christmas? And she's like, no, I don't. And then proceeds to tell the most out-of-pocket story about the one time her dad climbed down the chimney and got stuck and died and broke his neck. And they didn't discover it until it started to smell, and they had to break down the chimney, and that's why I shouldn't celebrate Christmas. And he's all like, I still love you, Kate. But you heard it here first, folks, okay? Phoebe Cates in Gremlins is the ultimate sad girl, all right? This is the most goth story that's ever been told.
Oh, I forgot to mention. When Billy finds his mom, he manages to fight off the gremlins, and they've killed all the ones that are in the house. Stripe, the most mischievous one, breaks free, and he runs through the snowbank and runs into the YMCA and jumps in the pool and multiplies. That's how our whole town gets infested with gremlins. Like, there's hundreds of them. So, cut back to Billy and his girlfriend. They're trying to devise a way to get rid of them because they're just going to keep multiplying if they don't manage to like get them all in one condensed space and get rid of all of them. So they devise a plan to trick them into the movie theater. They get them all there. They're eating their popcorn. It's like really cute and comical. Like they're sitting there watching Snow White having a blast. They light the movie theater on fire. And all the gremlins perish in the fire. It's like really horrific too, like they all melt and everything, except for one. Stripe manages to escape. And they see him breaking free and like making tracks in the snowbank, and Billy, Kate, his girlfriend, and Gizmo chase Stripe down into the hardware store. And this is where we reach the thrilling conclusion of Gremlins. But rather than tell you what happens, I'm going to show you all in amazing animation the finale of Gremlins.
Okay, so it's a showdown in a hardware store with Billy and Stripe, the evil gremlin. Now they are going back and forth. It is baseball bat versus chainsaw. It's like, and then Stripe is eventually like, screw this, you're too hard to kill on my own. I'm gonna multiply and we're gonna like multiply kill you. So he jumps on the fountain and he starts to multiply. He starts to shapeshift. Ooh. When in the 11th hour, Gizmo comes on a toy car and opens up the blinds. The sun shines in. And Stripe starts to melt. Ooh, he dissolves. And then it's over.
Oh my god, wow, can you believe that sequence? Oh my gosh, it felt like I was there. Now thank you guys so much for watching Gremlins with me. This is one of my favorite holiday movies. No, I didn't say it's the best Christmas horror movie because it is simply just the best Christmas movie, all right? I watch this every holiday season, especially around Christmas time. Like, nothing gets me in the mood more. I love me some Gremlins. And this movie was a monster hit. Like, when it came out, it was competing, like, neck and neck with Ghostbusters. I mean, Ghostbusters won, but I honestly feel like I could watch Gremlins all the time. I never got that Ghostbusters hype. I'm not that heterosexual. I want to thank you guys so much for watching this, and let me know what your little childhood memories of Gremlins were if you were a kid when you watched this, because honestly, it scared the dickens out of me, but I love it now as an adult. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, bye! Now hit the outro!
Oh my god, click here and watch my Friday the 13th recap, or watch my recap of Black Christmas. Come on, click it, you know you want to. If you don't click it, I'll feed you after midnight. You won't multiply, but you will get a tummy ache. So click it!